He gave his last few coins for bus fare to a flustered woman, unaware she was the city's most formidable CEO, an act that rerouted both their destinies. The biting November wind whipped around the exposed corner where Marco stood, a grim companion to the hollow ache in his stomach. His worn canvas jacket, a relic from brighter days, offered little solace against the encroaching chill of both the weather and his prospects. Marco, an artist whose hands ached to mold clay into expressions of the city's hidden soul, found those hands more often empty, or clutching the few coins that stood between him and outright hunger. His small attic room, drafty and dimly lit, housed more dreams than possessions. Yet, within him, a stubborn flame of compassion flickered, a refusal to let his own hardships extinguish his empathy for others. It was a legacy from his abuela, whose gentle spirit had taught him that shared sorrow was halved, and shared kindness, however small, was a fortune in itself. He was at the bus stop, not with a destination in mind, but because the rhythmic rumble of the buses offered a semblance of movement in a life that felt painfully stagnant. His last few dollars, a meager collection of coins, were counted and recounted, destined for a loaf of day-old bread and perhaps a cup of cheap, hot coffee. He watched the other waiting passengers, their faces etched with the city's relentless demands, each a story he longed to capture in sculpture, if only he could afford the clay. A profound sense of isolation often settled upon him in these moments, the loneliness of an artist unseen, a voice unheard in the urban cacophony. He yearned for connection, for a sign that the beauty he saw in the world, even in its brokenness, resonated with another soul. Suddenly, a sleek black car, utterly out of place in this gritty neighborhood, pulled up haphazardly a little down the street, and a woman emerged, her movements clipped and agitated. She wore a tailored charcoal suit that spoke of boardrooms and power, but her face, usually a mask of composed authority he might have imagined, was now a canvas of raw, unadulterated panic. This was Eleanor Vance, CEO of Vance Industries, a titan of global commerce, a woman whose decisions could make markets tremble. But in this moment, stripped of her usual entourage and digital lifelines, she was simply a person in distress, her expensive phone dead in her hand, her purse apparently snatched or left behind in the chaos of a morning that had spectacularly imploded before a crucial meeting. Wealth, for once, offered no immediate solution. Marco observed the woman's escalating panic. She patted her pockets, looked around with wide, unseeing eyes, her meticulously styled auburn hair now slightly disheveled by her frantic movements. He saw the subtle tremor in her hands, the tightening of her jaw, signs of a composure rapidly unraveling. His own few coins felt heavy in his pocket, the bread, the coffee, the small vital comforts they represented. A voice of self-preservation whispered, "Look away. Not your problem. You have less than she ever will." But then, his abuela's face, her eyes gentle with understanding, swam into his vision. "Mijo," her voice echoed in his memory. "The smallest light can pierce the deepest dark." He took a shallow breath, the cold air stinging his lungs, and pushed aside his own needs. He approached her hesitantly. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice soft, a contrast to the harsh city sounds. "You look like you're in a bit of trouble. Is there anything I can do to help?" Eleanor Vance, accustomed to commanding attention, to people fawning or fearing, looked up, startled. She saw a man with kind, tired eyes, his clothes worn, his face bearing the quiet dignity of someone familiar with hardship. For a moment, her corporate defenses remained, a flicker of suspicion in her gaze. I seem to have misplaced my wallet, and my phone is dead," she managed, her voice tighter than she intended. "I need to get downtown urgently for a meeting." She omitted the part about the crucial multi-billion-dollar merger. Marco nodded, understanding instantly. He'd seen that look of sudden, disorienting helplessness before. Without a word, he reached into his pocket, his cold fingers fumbling with the coins. He poured them into his palm, $2.75, his entire worldly wealth. He extended his hand. "Here," he said simply. "It's enough for the bus fare downtown. It's the express, gets you there pretty quick." Eleanor stared at the offering, the small pile of silver and copper coins in his chapped artist's hand. A wave of disbelief, then a strange, unidentifiable emotion washed over her. This man, who looked like he counted every penny, was offering her his last. "Oh no, I couldn't possibly," she protested, though her voice lacked conviction. "Thank you, but—" "Please," Marco insisted gently. "Someone helped me once when I was in a tight spot, just paying it forward. Besides," he added with a faint wry smile, "you look like you need to be somewhere important more than I do." His simple sincerity disarmed her completely. The bus rumbled to a halt beside them, its doors hissing open. "That's your bus," he said. "Quick, before it leaves." Eleanor, still slightly dazed by the unexpected act of kindness from a complete stranger who clearly had so little, found herself moving towards the bus. "Thank you," she managed again, the words feeling utterly inadequate. What's your name?" "Marco," he replied as she fumbled with the coins he'd pressed into her hand. She wanted to give him her card, to promise repayment, but the driver was impatient, and the doors were already beginning to close. "Marco, But he simply nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile on his lips, and stepped back from the curb, already turning away, perhaps towards the bakery. His mission of mercy complete, his own needs now more pressing. She boarded the bus, the coins clutched tightly in her hand. As the vehicle pulled away, she looked back, catching a final glimpse of him, a solitary figure already blending into the city's gray backdrop. The warmth of the bus was a stark contrast to the chill outside and to the even colder, more transactional world she usually inhabited. The $2.75 felt heavier than any platinum credit card she'd ever held. It wasn't just money, it was a piece of someone's struggle, freely given. Her crucial meeting, the billion-dollar merger, suddenly seemed less significant than the profound, unexpected humanity she had just encountered. The rest of the day was a blur of high-stakes negotiations and strategic decisions. She navigated it with her usual formidable competence, her game face firmly in place. But beneath the surface, Marco's selfless gesture resonated, a quiet counterpoint to the cacophony of her corporate life. That evening, in her sterile, impeccably designed penthouse apartment overlooking the glittering city skyline, Eleanor Vance, CEO, felt a disquiet she hadn't experienced in years. The success, the power, the immense wealth, it all felt strangely hollow. She had everything, yet a street artist with nothing had shown her a richness of spirit that made her own life feel impoverished. She couldn't get his face out of her mind. The kind eyes, the quiet dignity, the simple act of offering all he had. She knew she had to find him. It wasn't just about repaying the bus fare. It was about understanding, about connecting with something genuine she feared had been eroded within herself. She summoned her chief of security, a man named Graves, whose usual tasks involved protecting her from corporate espionage or overzealous paparazzi. "Graves," she said, her voice firm, "I need you to find someone. His name is Marco. He's an artist. I met him this morning at the bus stop on Eldridge and Stanton. He gave me bus fare." Graves, a man rarely surprised, blinked slowly. "An artist, ma'am, at a bus stop?" "Yes," Eleanor confirmed, a hint of impatience in her tone. "Find him." Graves, with the efficiency for which he was handsomely paid, began the search. It was a needle-in-a-haystack operation, armed with a vague description and a first name. But Eleanor Vance's resources were considerable. They scanned security footage from the area, cross-referenced local artist registries, and discreetly inquired in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Marco had bought his day-old bread, foregoing the coffee. The 75 cents from Eleanor's fare wasn't quite enough. He returned to his small attic room, the city's noise a distant roar, and tried to lose himself in his sketches. He drew the faces he'd seen at the bus stop, the weariness, the fleeting hope, the hardened resilience. He drew the woman in the charcoal suit, her initial panic, the flicker of surprise when he'd offered the coins. He wondered briefly if she'd made it to her important meeting. He didn't expect to ever see her again. Such fleeting encounters were the norm in the vast anonymity of the city. His life was a cycle of small hustles, searching for discarded materials he could repurpose for his sculptures, occasionally selling a sketch for a few dollars, always chasing the elusive dream of a gallery show, of a life where his art could sustain him. He often helped Mrs. Diaz, his elderly downstairs neighbor, carrying her groceries up the steep flights of stairs or fixing her leaky faucet, her grateful smiles a currency more valuable to him than money. His abuela had taught him that community, even in poverty, was wealth. One afternoon, as he was meticulously shaping a piece of found metal into a bird's wing, there was a knock on his door. It was too firm, too authoritative for Mrs. Diaz. He opened it to find a tall man in a severe dark suit, Graves. "Marco Reyes?" Graves asked, his expression unreadable. Marco nodded, a knot of apprehension tightening in his chest. Was it about the overdue rent? "Ms. Eleanor Vance would like to speak with you," Graves stated, not asked. "She asked me to convey her gratitude for your assistance the other day, and would like to thank you personally." Marco was stunned. The woman from the bus stop. Eleanor Vance. He vaguely recalled the name on a half-glimpsed headline somewhere, something about big business. He hadn't connected it. She found me," he stammered. "Miss Vance is very resourceful," Graves replied dryly. He then presented Marco with an envelope, a token of her appreciation. Marco opened it. Inside was a certified check for $5,000. His breath caught. It was more money than he'd seen in years. He could pay his rent for a year, buy art supplies, eat properly, but a strange unease settled over him. This felt transactional. It diminished the simple humanity of his gesture. "Please tell Miss Vance I appreciate this," he said slowly, "but it's too much. It was just bus fare." Graves looked surprised. "She was quite insistent, Mr. Reyes." Eleanor, who had waited in the car downstairs, had anticipated this. She'd told Graves that if Marco was hesitant, to invite him for coffee to discuss a potential commission. She was deeply intrigued by a man who would offer his last coins and then hesitate at a substantial reward. Marco, after much internal debate and a gentle insistence from Graves that Miss Vance was keen to discuss his art, agreed to meet. He couldn't deny the allure of a potential commission, however unlikely it seemed. The meeting was set at a discreet, upscale cafe, a world away from Marco's usual haunts. He wore his cleanest, though still patched, shirt and hoped he didn't look too out of place. Eleanor was already there, not in a power suit, but in elegant, understated, casual wear. She looked different, softer, the tension lines around her eyes less pronounced. "Marco," she said, her smile genuine, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming." "Miss Vance," he replied, still a little awed, a little wary. "Please, call me Eleanor." As they talked, she skillfully steered the conversation towards his art, asking insightful questions, listening intently as he spoke of his sculptures, his vision of capturing the city's soul in metal and clay. He found himself opening up, his passion for his work overriding his initial nervousness. He saw no condescension in her eyes, only genuine interest. He still didn't fully grasp who she was, beyond being wealthy enough to offer $5,000 as a thank you. The true revelation came a few days later. He was sketching in a small park when he saw a discarded financial newspaper. On the front page was a striking photo of Eleanor Vance addressing a shareholders' meeting, the headline blaring, "Vance Industries CEO announces record profits." CEO, Vance Industries, one of the largest conglomerates in the country. Marco felt the ground shift beneath him. The kind, interested woman he'd shared coffee with, The distressed traveler he'd given bus fare to was a titan of industry, a millionaire many times over. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over him. Shock, a sense of being utterly out of his depth, a foolish feeling of having been naive, and even a faint irrational sting of betrayal. Why hadn't she told him? He felt small, insignificant, his act of kindness now seeming almost pitifully microscopic against the backdrop of her immense wealth. He imagined her world, a gilded cage of power and influence, so far removed from his attic room and struggles that it was like another planet. His art, his dreams, suddenly felt fragile, exposed. Eleanor sensed Marco's withdrawal almost immediately. He didn't return her calls for a few days. When she finally reached him, his voice was strained, distant. She knew, with a sinking heart, that he had discovered the truth. The chasm of her wealth, which she had momentarily forgotten in the quiet authenticity of their conversations, had yawned open between them. She had faced hostile takeovers and boardroom betrayals with more equanimity than she felt facing Marco's quiet disappointment. In her world, people either envied her wealth, resented it, or tried to exploit it. Few ever saw past it to the woman underneath, a woman who, despite her power, often felt profoundly isolated. Marco's uncomplicated kindness had been a beacon, and she dreaded the thought of it being extinguished by the harsh glare of her public identity. Her second-in-command, a ruthlessly ambitious COO named Bernard Shaw, had already made snide remarks about her uncharacteristic interest in some nobody artist. Bernard, a man who defined worth by net worth, viewed anyone outside their gilded circle with suspicion or contempt. He represented the very cynicism Eleanor was beginning to find suffocating. "Eleanor, you must maintain a certain image," Bernard had cautioned, his tone smooth but underscored with disapproval. "Such associations can be misinterpreted, bad for the brand." His words, meant to guide her back to the sensible path, only highlighted the emotional sterility of the world he championed. Eleanor, however, found she couldn't simply dismiss Marco. His initial gesture, born of pure empathy when he had nothing to gain, had touched something deep within her. She decided she had to bridge this new gap, to explain. She went to the small park where she knew he often sketched. He was there, his shoulders slumped, his charcoal moving listlessly across the page. Seeing her, his expression became guarded. "Marco," she began, her voice gentle, "I know you know, and I am truly sorry I wasn't completely open with you from the start." He didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the indifferent pigeons. "Why wouldn't you be?" he asked, his voice low, devoid of its usual warmth. "Was it some kind of experiment? See if the poor artist would play nice with the hidden millionaire?" The accusation, though quiet, stung more than any boardroom attack. "No, Marco, never," she insisted, her voice earnest. "When you helped me, I was genuinely in distress. Your kindness, it was like a lifeline. Later, when we had coffee, I wanted to be Eleanor, the person, not Eleanor Vance, the CEO. It's been a very long time since anyone looked at me without an agenda, without seeing the power or the money first. I wanted to hold on to that, just for a little while. It was selfish, perhaps, and I hurt you. For that, I am deeply sorry." Marco finally looked at her. He saw not the formidable CEO from the newspaper, but the vulnerable woman from the bus stop, her eyes pleading for understanding. He remembered the genuine interest she'd shown in his art, the insightful questions. He thought of his abuela's belief in seeing the heart behind the facade. "It's a lot to process, Eleanor," he admitted, his voice softening. "Your world, my world, they're not just different, they're different galaxies." "I know," she conceded, "but the person you helped, the person who values your art and your spirit, that's real. That hasn't changed." A fragile understanding began to mend the tear between them. Over the following weeks they navigated this new, complex dynamic. Eleanor, with a conscious effort, stepped into Marco's world. She visited his tiny studio. her expensive shoes incongruous on the paint-splattered floor, and listened, truly listened, as he spoke of his inspirations, his frustrations, the soul he poured into his sculptures. She saw his immense talent, his unwavering integrity in the face of constant struggle. She began to see the city through his eyes, not as a series of assets and opportunities, but as a tapestry of human stories, of hidden beauty and quiet suffering. Marco, in turn, cautiously allowed Eleanor to offer glimpses into her life, though he always felt like an observer from a distant shore. He attended a sterile, high-society charity auction with her once, feeling acutely out of place in a borrowed suit, watching the casual display of unimaginable wealth. He saw the loneliness that clung to Eleanor despite her power, the subtle barbs from people like Bernard, the constant pressure to maintain an unbreachable facade. "It's a different kind of poverty, isn't it?" he mused one evening after a particularly draining event. "All that glitter, but so little warmth." Eleanor looked at him, a flicker of surprise and gratitude in her eyes. "You see it," she whispered. "Most people don't." Their connection, forged in an act of simple kindness, deepened. He wasn't intimidated by her wealth, and she wasn't dismissive of his lack of it. They were two souls recognizing a shared humanity. Bernard, however, intensified his efforts to create distance, subtly implying to Eleanor that Marco was an opportunist, a potential embarrassment. He even tried to anonymously offer Marco a large sum of money to disappear, an offer Marco instantly recognized as a crude attempt at manipulation and firmly rejected, further solidifying Eleanor's growing respect for him and her disdain for Bernard's tactics. The transformation was palpable in both of them. Marco, buoyed by Eleanor's genuine belief in his art, a belief that never translated into direct financial handouts but rather into introductions to discerning, ethical gallery owners who appreciated his raw talent, found his artistic voice strengthening. He completed a series of sculptures inspired by the unseen city, pieces that were both gritty and profoundly hopeful. He was no longer just surviving. He was creating with a renewed sense of purpose and a dawning belief in his own worth. Eleanor, meanwhile, began to dismantle the walls around her own heart and her corporate identity. Inspired by Marco's unwavering compassion and his conviction that art could heal and connect, she established the Vance Foundation for Emerging Artists, a genuine initiative, not a PR stunt, dedicated to providing grants and studio spaces for struggling creators from marginalized communities. "You taught me, Marco," she confessed one evening as they reviewed applications, "that talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. We can change that." Bernard Shaw was apoplectic, viewing the foundation as a frivolous distraction from core business. "This is sentimental nonsense, Eleanor," he fumed during a heated board meeting. "Our shareholders expect profits, not patronage of starving artists." But Eleanor, no longer the purely profit-driven CEO she once was, stood firm. "Our shareholders also expect a company with a soul, Bernard. A company that invests in the community that sustains it. Perhaps it's time our definition of profit evolved." Her newfound conviction, her quiet strength, surprised everyone, including herself. She found a deeper satisfaction in this work than in any corporate conquest. Their personal bond also evolved, from tentative friendship into a deep, resonant love. It was a love built not on shared backgrounds or societal expectations, but on mutual respect, shared vulnerabilities, and an unshakable belief in each other's fundamental goodness. He helped her see the world beyond balance sheets. She helped him believe his voice deserved to be heard. They shared their pasts. Marco, the ache of losing his abuela, the keeper of his flame; Eleanor, the crushing weight of her father's expectations and the emotional desert of her upbringing despite material opulence. "You don't need a fortune to have a rich life," Marco once said, his words simple but profound, striking a chord deep within her. The true climax of their intertwined journey arrived not in a boardroom, but at the inaugural exhibition of the Vance Foundation's first grant recipients. Bernard, seeing his influence wane as Eleanor increasingly embraced her new vision, orchestrated a last-ditch effort to discredit both her and Marco. He leaked doctored information to a notorious gossip columnist, hinting at an inappropriate relationship, and suggesting Marco was unduly influencing Eleanor for personal gain, implying the foundation was a sham. The story broke the morning of the exhibition, casting a pall over what should have been a triumphant event. Marco was devastated, not for himself, but for Eleanor, for the artists. He offered to withdraw, to disappear, to protect her. "They'll twist this, Eleanor. They'll hurt you," he said, his voice raw with pain. But Eleanor, drawing strength from the very values Marco had reawakened in her, refused to buckle. That evening, facing a room buzzing with whispers and reporters, she didn't hide. She walked to the podium, Marco by her side, his hand steadying hers. "There are reports today," she began, her voice clear and unwavering, "questioning my judgment, questioning the integrity of this foundation, and questioning the character of a man whose only crime was to show extraordinary kindness to a stranger." She looked directly at Marco, her eyes filled with love and fierce pride. "Yes, Marco Reyes gave me his last few dollars for bus fare when he thought I was just another person in need, long before he knew my name. That act, that selfless gesture from a struggling artist, taught me more about true wealth and humanity than a lifetime in corporate America. This foundation is not a whim. It is a testament to the belief that art, compassion, and human dignity are essential. If that makes me a target for cynicism, so be it. I stand by Marco, I stand by these artists, and I stand by the belief that small acts of kindness can, indeed, change the world." Her speech, heartfelt and defiant, turned the tide. The sincerity was undeniable. The gossip columnist's story fizzled, and Bernard's desperate maneuver backfired spectacularly, leading to his swift and unlamented departure from Vance Industries. The exhibition was a resounding success, launching the careers of several talented artists, including Marco, whose unseen city sculptures were hailed for their profound emotional depth. The resolution was not a fairy tale ending, but a real, grounded new beginning. Marco's art found its audience, his success built on talent and integrity, not patronage. He used his growing platform to advocate for other marginalized artists. Eleanor continued to transform Vance Industries, integrating ethical considerations and community investment into its core philosophy, proving that a corporation could indeed have a conscience and still thrive. Their love, tested and affirmed, became their anchor. They married quietly, their life a blend of his grounded simplicity and her dynamic world, finding a harmonious rhythm between quiet evenings in Marco's now slightly larger, but still unpretentious studio, and Eleanor's continued leadership on a global stage. They never forgot the bus stop. Occasionally they would return, not in a limousine, but on foot, watching the diverse river of humanity flow by. One crisp autumn afternoon, they saw a young student, her face creased with worry, counting out a few meager coins, clearly short for her fare. Marco caught Eleanor's eye. Without a word, Eleanor approached the student, a warm smile on her face. "It looks like you could use a little help," she said gently, pressing a $20 bill into the young woman's hand. "Someone did the same for me once." As they walked away, Marco's arm around Eleanor's shoulder, he said, "You see, Abuela was right. The smallest light." Eleanor leaned her head against him. "And sometimes," she added, her voice soft, "that light shows you the way home." Their journey, sparked by a handful of coins, became a quiet testament to the enduring power of empathy, proving that true connection can bridge any divide, and that the most valuable investments are always those made in the human heart, one small act of kindness at a time. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the profound impact of a simple, selfless gesture, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. We are committed to bringing you narratives that celebrate the transformative power of human connection and the quiet heroism found in everyday acts of kindness. Marco didn't know he was helping a CEO. He simply saw a person in need. And Eleanor, in her moment of unexpected vulnerability, received a gift far more valuable than her entire fortune. It's a reminder that true wealth isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by what we give, especially when we give from the heart. We'll see you in the next one, where another soul waits to be seen.